Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of our Dungeon Boss FAQ series. I have a rather short video for you today. I'm not going to try and take up too much time, but I just want to touch a little bit on the combat revamp, what it means for you, some of the main bullet points as far as speaking points and such like that, and just give some basic information. Now, I covered the combat revamp a while back when it was first announced. We got some information about what was to be expected and what some of the minor changes were going to be. You can go back and look at that video if you want to see a more in-depth version of this. This is going to be sort of a rehash of that. What I'm going to be doing mostly here is just going over these four main bullet points here to talk about the changes that took place with the revamp and what you can expect moving forward. So first and foremost, the most noticeable difference probably was going to be the hero stars. The hero stars, essentially what it did, if you look at any given hero, you could pick somebody that's unused. I think I still have runes on my Abigail, for example. Abigail was not somebody that was used very often, but I did a video with her with that Furious Permares team, and so I never took the runes off of her. But she has never really been regarded as one of the best heroes. We open up her hero card, and lo and behold, after some tinkering, she's got 7,500 attack. Now that's just insane compared to, let's just say, roughly a year ago when the epics first came out, and people were looking at like Cobalt, for example, with a max attack. Cobalt had roughly 5,000 attack, and so these numbers look absolutely insane as far as the stars go. I'm not going to cover too much on the stars right now. I do have a couple of quick comparisons, new system versus old system, that I will show you towards the end of the video here, just to show some of the number crunching that I did as far as how much different or how much better they are. What I did want to touch on, though, is as far as the stars go, the main point here is that the hero star bonus is now outside of the base stats, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So that star bonus is going to impact those four main stats. So defense gets it, skill gets it as well, max health gets it. Aside from that, you will not see that anywhere else. Those four main stats are the ones that are impacted it. And essentially, as far as the stars go, there were two main things that happened. Now, there wasn't a direct nerf to defenses or a buff to defenses. There wasn't a direct buff to defenses. There was a minor nerf to attacks, and what that is the damage calculations, not the actual attack stat, but the damage calculations, counted runes in an atypical way that allowed for excessive damage that allowed attacks to vastly outpace defense. With that option now mitigated, the defense scaling that we get with the bonus from our hero star compared to that of the attack are going to be much more comparable. What I've found personally for this is that it's going to make some of the PvP matches a little bit longer. You're not seeing quite the same level of one-shot meta that we saw before, though it is still there. Shade can still gank some Koroses or other glass cannon type heroes. Those guys are still susceptible. I do see a little bit more emphasis on defense rather than damage reduction. I want to go back out to the beginning here. Damage reduction, this is improved against heavy damage. So I don't really know what the tooltip means on that, but what I wanted to talk about with damage reduction is essentially there's been a cap put on the damage reduction, so you're not going to see any of those teams that have an unkillable bauble, for example, because none of your damage can actually get through. So even if you have, poorly runed people and you're going up against hardcore defenders that have high damage reduction, you should still be able to get some damage through because that damage reduction is capped at 90%. Now, personally, I feel like I've still seen a few attacks do 0 damage. Most of these were late at night, though, so my brain is a little bit fuzzy. Some of them could have just been spirit attacks against somebody like Echo. I would have to kind of keep a closer eye on it. But the damage reduction can still be somewhat viable, but the way that it stacks now, it is no longer additively stacked, so we can't just take percent and add them all together. They're multiplicative, which basically means the more you add, it doesn't quite have as much effect. So getting towards that 90% is going to be extremely difficult. Damage switching into damage penetration, this is a direct counter to damage reduction. This is the way that most of us wanted this trait to work in the first place, as far as plus damage versus damage reduction. It's a direct differential now, so if they have 20% damage reduction and you have 25% damage penetration, you're guaranteed to have 5% of your damage go through and do damage. If your damage penetration is less than the damage reduction, then their damage reduction will be reduced by your damage penetration. So it's very simple. The only thing is you're not going to be able to see the real true impact of it because we can't see the stats on the enemy's runes. We're not going to be able to anticipate how much reduction they actually have. So that's one of those long-term things that the devs said they would like to do, is to have full disclosure as far as attacker and defender runes, so that we can look at the defender's runes and say, oh, I see they're stacking 60% damage reduction, and make our teams accordingly based on that extra information. And just also knowing those fourth stats and stuff would be helpful in some cases. So one other thing that happened with those damage penetration changes is you'll likely see, I'll see if I have any on here as far as destruction runes ought to be. That one did not have it on there. But I'm looking for one that there's one that has extra plus damage to it. So for the most part, they did say that the damage penetration runes were going to be better when they converted. They said nobody was going to lose value on these runes when they converted them to damage penetration. I don't know if they've been artificially inflated at all as far as doing more damage, but they did change the amount of plus damage that could go on a hero as well. They increase the cap on the additional damage that can be addressed. But if you see some of your runes, if you look at something like, I guess I don't have one that has a maximum one on it. I thought I had some that were 10% and they got bumped to 15, but again, that's just speculation. So here's one. Sorry, I didn't look through these beforehand. There, so there's a plus 12%. I think actually the 15% was just the maximum one anyway, so I don't think there's a direct increase. My thought is they probably just left the percentages as they were, and we'll call it a day at that. Now, last but not least here, probably the most I guess, frustrating aspect of this combat revamp. I've seen absolutely nothing but negativity as far as Gen Chat goes, and that is this notion of team healing. I've been trying to play advocate of the devs here as much as I can. I have been under the working assumption that the campaign mode in general has been an absolute joke ever since runes come out. There's basically no tactics at all as far as beating campaign dungeons, boss mode or challenge mode. And so this notion of team healing being split and nerfed pretty heavily, I'm all for that, because I mentioned multiple times that players that played before runes came out will know how hard some of these challenge mode dungeons were, and trying to 3-star those without the seriously OP heroes that we have right now. The one that I constantly reference is that new players will never know what it's like to try and 3-star the Fire Lord Temple, and dealing with that boss at that one that did the Searing Hack triple attack move, and he also had the Savage Fury that Sume had at the time, so the more you kill him, the harder he hits, and he just wipes your entire team. And that was a brutal one. Way back in the day, we had to try and stack Aegis shields from either Yasmin or Augustus, and it was not easy at the time. But those days are long since gone now. Hopefully with this healing nerf, it'll make some of the campaign dungeons a little bit more relevant again. I'm hoping that maybe the rewards will get beefed up there because of this. Now, that being said, a lot of people are really upset about the team healing as far as PvP goes. They kind of go hand in hand. Personally, if you're going to take a healer into PvP, this is now a risk-reward option that you got to do. And what it's going to amount to is dealing with how you want to ruin that healer up. It's straight from the devs on the forum that your healing was absolutely terrible in the PvP match, and he basically said flat out, are you equipping skill runes? And that's essentially what it amounts to. And I just want to show you some basics as far as how this actually works here. So I'm going to try and pick somebody that, notice Ember doesn't have any runes on her, and her base ability here. The nice thing about the healing now is they are correctly reflected on here. So this says 1907 split between all allies. So if we add a few runes on here and get some skill on her, it started at 1907. Let's see, here's 239 skill. Ability jumped up to 2360. So it went from 1900 to 2360 with one rune. So it's possible that if you start stacking some skill, these are actually going to grow rather quickly, and they will ultimately start panning out a little bit. They won't give you the 300 or 400 heals that a lot of people are seeing right now with Solaris, because so many people have Solaris with damage reduction and such like that, where there's no skill on there at all. She's barely healing anything, and it's causing some serious problems. You can do this with really any healer. I did it with Sifu as well. Showed his first ability here, or not his first ability, but his first heal, his only heal rather, starts at 4039. If we add in a rune that's got some skill to it, probably can't find any. Okay, there's 175, so it's not much. Increases it from 4039 up to 4603. You get 600 just from this terrible little greater rune here. It just has one little skill attribute to it. So if you start stacking skill on some of these healers, I think you're going to see much better heals come around. Like I said, it just comes down to a risk-reward concept. You have to determine how much skill you want to put on there, how much value you place on your healer. Personally, I don't use much healing in PvP with the exception of Solaris, and honestly, I'm not really using Solaris for heals. It's nice to cleanse with Solaris, but I'm using Solaris for the revive. So take that with a grain of salt as far as how the healing goes, but you can stack skill. And also, that was only team heals that were really nerfed. This heal here, this is a single target heal, 4600. That's going to give a good chunk of healing to any ally that you give. So if you start putting some skill runes on your healers, I think they will be viable for PvE dungeons. PvP, I didn't see a lot of change to the actual meta that's come around. Let's just take a quick peek at the PvP defenders. I'm still seeing a lot of the same ones. I have not seen much of a shakeup as far as this goes. So that one's still pretty common. That one's not overly difficult. Still seeing a lot of beasts out there. And still seeing a lot of Shade plus Zom. The most common one that I'm seeing up in the high legend leagues is Gortusk, Shade, Zom, and Darius. That team is still pretty potent. As far as PvP matches going longer, sometimes those are still very short matches. There's still plenty of teams out there that are very, very powerful. Like I said, I haven't seen a ton of changes to the actual PvP meta just yet, aside from the fact that people are starting to maybe not bring healers along. But in my opinion, it's almost a necessary evil to bring Solaris along. So it's going to come down to a little bit of balancing in terms of throwing some skill on her versus just pure damage reduction. So it's about mitigating that death, I guess. If you can get one good heal off and then she dies and then you can use her revive, that might be the answer. Alright, so that covers the basics of what the combat revamp did. Like I said, I didn't want to take too long to discuss this, but I do want to take a moment to go into one of my case studies and show you the number crunching, just in case you're curious about how the current combat revamp stacks up to the previous combat system. So sit tight, I'll have that in just a second here. Okay, so what I have here is just a quick little infographic about how the calculations took place. The biggest difference as far as the combat revamp was how the stars play a part in terms of the overall stat calculation. If you look on my top line, I have a line for it before combat revamp. We can see that each star increased by 12.5%. Now, I calculated this out a long time ago, way back when I did my Dungeon Boss beginner series in terms of how stars and ascensions work. And I found that to be 12.5%, and that's been corroborated by a number of sources. What it did at the time is you start out with a base, for example, 1,000. You got one other star, it increased by 12.5%. The next star from there was 12.5% from the previous version, 12.5% from previous, until you got to your final result. The new system did not allow these to be from the previous version. Instead, it took all of these outside of the base, and it says my base is 1000, but 2-star now gives a bonus to that from the base. 3-star gives 25% from the base. 4 stars should be 37.5 from the base. 6-star is 62.5% from the base. Dungeon Boss does do some rounding, so if these numbers do not look the same as far as the percent bonuses, that is why, but it is a 12% boost per. I created a simple example here. I added 3,500 in runes, 900, 400, 900, 400, 900, just to show what the ending results would be. So this generic hero here that started out with a base attack of 1,000, once we add 3,500 in runes, after it calculates 6 stars up to this 1,800, the 6-star attack, 5,300, is not that unheard of. We've seen plenty of heroes that are easily able to get to 5,300 attack power. Those could be some of your casters and such like that. And so basically the way this took place is there was a calculated star, which was this value here, and then it added in the rune power afterwards. And then on top of that, it did consider other percentage increases from epics and things like that, or other passives. But this is the basic idea of how it was calculated. With taking those star bonuses outside of the base, what it did now is it said basically take your base attack plus the rune power first, and then multiply it by this star bonus. So it could be multiplied by 1.625 for a 6-star, 1.125 for a 2-star, and so on and so forth. And so what I found with this is when I did some number crunching is that overall, if you look at just a no rune hero, the no rune heroes after the revamp are actually weaker than what the no rune heroes are previously, because they don't have that cumulative bonus tacking on. It was just a flat fixed rate percent across the board, which is why we see these grow a little bit smaller. That being said, once runes were introduced, the power of the star power is going to be compounded with the rune power. This value and ultimately the difference between how strong a hero is now versus before the revamp, these values here will actually grow exponentially with the rune power that you have. So once you get up to a maximum rune power here, as far as the most possible attack, you're going to see the biggest returns on your investment here as far as the runes go. So all in all, what I found is that, like I said, these are lower to start with, but it's a very minuscule amount. But ultimately, the more power you put on there as far as the runes, the more it's going to compound how much it was better than what it is before. Now these aren't really comparing your 5-star Gore-Tusk versus somebody else's 6-star Gore-Tusk. I haven't done any type of analysis like that, and I would actually need some basically get some data and look at what the values are and stuff in order to figure out how that's going to play a part and how much better your Koros is versus their Koros. We'd need a lot of information to be able to number crunch those things. If you want to see a tighter analysis on how much better a 5-star Koros is than a 4-star or a 6-star versus a 5-star, I can certainly do that, but I need to know exactly what runes are on there so that I can compare an exact rune set. And actually I could probably just use the same runes, same superior runes on a 5-star and a 6-star and just see what the numbers shake out to. Those should be able to be easily calculated using this concept here. Just to prove that I'm not crazy and that these numbers are legitimate, I actually whipped up an official case study. I just grabbed somebody way towards the bottom that I knew had close to 1,000 attack as far as the base, and that happened to be Yokozuna. Yokozuna on his hero card says his base attack was 1099, and then when I looked at his actual attack stat, it showed 1785. These were before runes. I picked a couple of junk runes that I had around that had some attack on there. It added 766 attack to it, and so ultimately what I did is I ran my little calculation here. I took the base attack plus the rune power, and then he got a multiplier of 1.625. This came out to 3030, and I think on his hero card for me, this actually came out to 3029 and some change. So it's almost exact, with the exception of some rounding errors due to probably this value here. So overall, that's kind of how the calculations take place, and like I said, it seems to be like a lot of people are seeing these new values here as far as attack power, and these numbers went way, way up. But you also have to remember that the defense values also went way back up, and also the attack calculation as far as damage output has also been modified. So even though it looks like everybody got much, much more powerful, keep in mind that all the defenders got more powerful as well, and the stats for calculating damage have been reduced a little bit too, which is in turn going to yield those longer PvP matches, in my opinion. So hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight into what the combat revamp did and what sort of values the numbers play in terms of star value and such like that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to let me know. I would be happy to do a follow-up on this if we have some unresolved issues that need to be addressed. Otherwise, we will see you again next time, and thanks again for watching. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting my channel. If you like this video, please show your continued support by hitting that like button, and be sure to check out both my YouTube channels for new content all the time. And always remember, peace is a lie, there's only passion. We'll see you next time.